the research for Sing Sing was very much based on reality and through like extensive interviews I had with formerly incarcerated men who were cast members in our movies. So they were my main guides of what it really felt like and what it looked like to be inside Sing Sing. So our movie was very much crafted to their personal experiences and really personal to them. And even though we didn't shoot at the actual Sing Sing prison, I just recreated everything as told me how they look like.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by production designer Ruta Kiskyte, my apologies for the last name, who recently worked on the feature Sing Sing. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Gordon. Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Such an honor.
You actually started out as a jewelry designer.
Yeah,
How did you make the leap from jewelry design to production design?
yeah. Thank you for that question. It was a while ago, and it's interesting because I've never planned to be a jewelry designer nor a production designer, but I studied stage design, which in hindsight kind of makes sense. And during stage design means you're doing a lot of scale models, which is, you're working on a tiny scale. And I was just like so addicted to it. And it just kind of automatically translated into jewelry. But also doing jewelry means you're doing not only that, but also all of your photos or like editorial work means you're curating some kind of an image. It's not only like the tiny object. So I think that after a while, that work spoke to some directors,
Mhm.
and I didn't really plan for it, but then had some producers calling me and asking me um to design some commercials, and I was like, are you kidding? Like, I have no experience in that. You're risking so much. It's a horrible idea. But then
Mhm.
I kind of I tried that, and then slowly I just pivoted to production design full time. And yeah, I almost forgot about that. Like, I don't really think about jewelry design anymore.
Well, it's crazy that they sort of brought you in like that. What was like, because there's so much involved in it. So like, how did you learn as you went? Like, was there someone you could lean on, or was there someone that sort of mentored you?
Um, Not really. I think what I took from doing jewelry is that it's basically running a business, and then the design process is like 5% of your time, and that's like the fun part and the part that everybody sees. But but really hitting the deadlines and being in charge of everything and being sort of responsible for everything, I feel like that that is very much similar to what a production designer does, in a way where the actual design process is like yeah, it's so pragmatic. Like it's very much what you can realistically do and what you can afford and how much time do you have, and just like standing by your word and meeting deadlines. So like yeah, there's so many similarities, and that was such a good school, really, like 100 times better than like the formal school that I went to, because you get to uh, yeah, like you're just like fully responsible.
Mhm.
um and like my mentors came on like much later in my like production design career, and I attended these master classes that were hosted in my home city of Vilnius, Lithuania, for most part, by these incredible girls. It's called the art department masterclass, and they would bring busy production designers from all over the world, like three or four at a time, that otherwise wouldn't be available at any school in the world, because like
Mhm.
they're active production designers. And I got to learn so much from them from like a very condensed um, courses. So that's, I think that gave me a lot of um, trust in my own,
Mhm.
in my own powers, sort of.
I've been a camera person for 30 years and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
I'm interested because you did a lot of commercial work before Sing Sing. And when I think about commercial work, I mean, everything's got a budget, but I feel like when it comes to advertising, they're very much focused on the image and making sure that they have their products looking a particular way and what have you. And I feel like for lower budget or indie films, they have a budget, but it's a lot more restrained than like a Marvel film. So like, what were some of the things that you learned in the advertising sort of world that you were able to bring into this lower budget project?
Actually, I know it might, I understand that it might look like that, or like there might be a question looking at my work, like the leap between like commercials and the features, but from my perspective, there was almost no leap of that. And I think there like I think maybe it's a misconception to think that commercials are very wealthy
Mm,
because in every production has its finances calculated to like, you know, like the tiniest detail, and there's never money to waste.
mhm,
Um, I think the amount of oxygen in the production comes down to how expensive a certain industry is. Like where are you actually shooting and what you can afford for an X amount of money. Um, but the main difference between the commercials and features, and I think features are in some part a little bit um even a little bit easier, even if like the budget is tiny, which I don't really even have a problem with like a tiny budget, um, is that on a feature you only have the director that you have to uh, talk to, and who's the approval body of things. And
mhm,
while on a commercial, why you might be able to get along with your director perfectly, like there are layers of approval, like there's agency and then there's client, and anything can happen in between that. So sometimes even like the simplest things might become challenging on a commercial. And yeah, but like really, I feel like on like budget side, there's really no tension from my
mhm.
perspective.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking it was like a leap in terms of your creative ability. Just to clarify, I was thinking more
Mhm,
like how different the two environments can be
mhm.
uh, in terms of like how they go about their creative processes.
The features, and in particularly this Sing Sing, is was something that had to be very much based in reality and very much based on research and being as truthful, as authentic as possible, to try and show the real, how does it feel to be inside a prison, and something that's
Mhm,
unaffected by prior cinematic representations of that, which oftentimes have a lot of cliches or misconceptions. Um, so it's almost like a form of journalism, um, which I love so much. Whereas commercials, um, there's always an element of that where you have to be realistic. On another hand, there could also be like a commercial where you have to create like a fantastical set, and maybe that's more common even in and commercials where he can be more theatrical and whimsical.
In films that have prisons, they might sort of, I guess, bend the truth or bend the looks. But I'm wondering, because this is based on a real event, so I'm wondering, did you meet with people and sort of get to see the place and discuss, like, what was your research like for this?
The research for Sing Sing was very much based on reality, and through like extensive interviews I had with formerly incarcerated men who who were part of the cast members, who were cast members in our movie. That's Clarence Divine Eye, who's the main supporting actor, who's playing himself, and John Divine G. Whitfield, who's played by Coleman Domingo. So they both served long prison sentences and served time inside Sing Sing, and also Brian Buell, who was the theater director. He's a civilian theater director, who's played by Paul Racy. So they were my main guides of what it really felt like and what it looked like to be inside Sing Sing. Because also, even another note, even in New York State alone, I was told by Divine G, who was moved among prisons during his sentence, that every prison has its own unique features, and they're unique, but like they're all of them are really oppressive places. So our movie was very much crafted to their personal experiences and really personal to them. And even though we didn't shoot at the actual Sing Sing prison, which it's an active prison, we cannot get in. We also shot it at the tail end of COVID, which was even like even more impossible to get in. But we shot it at Downstate Correctional Facility, which was decommissioned maybe like a month before we got in. And actually, most of our cast went through that facility and served time there because it was like a processing facility. And Clarence Divine Eye Macklin, even his cell was right above his movie cell when he was there. So so all of the surroundings that we had control over, like their personal prison cells, I just recreated everything as Divine G and Divine Eye told me how they look like. And what was fascinating, that even though very little of items that would signify your identity or personality are really restricted inside the prison. Like even some colors are not allowed. Even with all those restrictions, their personalities were able to shine through. So whereas Divine G, he was incarcerated for a crime he did not commit, and he was a writer. He wrote novels and theater plays, and was studying law during his time of incarceration. And he had all these documents and his novels and scripts and all his checklists, like monthly, daily, yearly, on his walls. So it was almost like his mind map. You can see like those walls were his brain. That's where he, like, so he wouldn't lose focus. And so we just like we recreated like his handwriting, his actual notes, his like exact typewriter that he had. So I wasn't really interested in like decorating the sets in a film sense, for it to be more impactful or support the story. It was really recreated as it was, and I was even surprised to see how visually impactful it was, and how different it was from Divine Eye's cell. And Divine Eye was like a real drug dealer, and he was on top of the food chain inside of a prison, and he made so much money that his problem was to hide that money somewhere, all that cash, throughout the prison. And yeah, he described his prison cell, which was completely different. Like he was all about the looks and status, and would display signs of status, like stacks of canned food, which in prison is like a huge status symbol, or like his Jordan sneakers, or like it was color coordinated, like in burgundy color, which like that color was allowed. So much so that even when while we were touring the facility with one of the facility managers who was still at the time, and we already had those cells dressed. And when he saw Divine eye fell, he was like, "Oh, this guy is telling other guys what to do." So for whoever who had that prison, who knew how to read the prison cues, it was evident what these guys were, even without them being present.
No, I would love to know, because like part of it's going to be the fact that they're in prison itself is going to help with this, but like how did you work with tone and sort of atmosphere in your design?
The tone and atmosphere was really there, really dictated by the facility. And I think what was interesting is that it wasn't what you would, I think, expect from what a prison looks like. Like the walls of the prison or of like downstate correctional facility are like half yellow and half pink, and which already seems counterintuitive. And like there's so much daylight, which is also counterintuitive, but like the the oppressive architecture is a lot less obvious, I think, that we are used to see in movies. And we just had the real thing, and it was like that. Like some of the spaces there, like one of their rehearsal spaces, it could look like a classroom if you didn't see the people in like the prison greens. But if you look closely through the window, you can see like there's razor wire all around it. And despite the fact that the actual prison is maybe not as claustrophobic as you might predict, it's so monotonous and so repetitive that whenever we get to the theater sequences, like I think there's a stark contrast, and almost like an escape from that monotonous prison reality where the incarcerated people can kind of call the shots and can create their own world and have their own colors, to paint the world in whichever world they want to build there.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
You sort of touched on it, like in the theater room where they're practicing, it's very different, but they put on 2 plays. And I'm wondering like how you went about sort of creating the look or the feel for these plays, since they are going to have restricted rules and restricted access to certain materials.
The real rehabilitation through the arts program started in, I don't want to lie, in 1998, I think. That needs to be fact checked, but around that time, and in the beginning, they were not allowed much for their theater plays. So they could only work with basically what they had inside their cell, like toilet paper and towels and bed sheets to create the sets or like props. But as the prison saw what the theater program, like what impact it had on the population and even on the guards, they started to allow more and more things into the theater. So eventually it became like this sacred space where all the rules almost like went out the window. Like by now, the theater program has its own wood shop where prisoners can work with, power tools and saws and like anything. They can create any sets. And at the very end of the movie, there's a montage of the real theater plays, and you can see like those are like normal sets, like there's woodwork and stuff, and they have like stage lights, and it's a proper theater, even though even if they don't have like a lot of resources or money to put up those plays. And in the movie we kind of show like a middle ground where you still need to craft something out of nothing. So in the movie we open into like this Shakespearean forest from Midsummer Night's Dream, and it looks like a forest foliage, but if you look closer, all of those things would have been from like a prison commissary. We just made foliage from cut up trash bags, and butterflies and birds from cut up candy foil with like nutrition facts still on them. It's like just very, very simple means. And the main production of time traveling comedy of Breaking the Mummy's Code, it was an original production written, directed, and designed by Brent Buell, who's played by Paul Raci. So we very much leaned into the original production and honored that, and we just tweaked a couple things. Like those are also super simple sets, more elaborate than the cut up trash bags, but just like big 2-dimensional set pieces that are very easy to move around. But we introduced like this giant cotton psych, almost like an oversized bed sheet, but we were then able to hit it with any kind of light of any color, and it would immediately transport you either to like orange Egyptian desert or like purple night in the middle of Hamlet's soliloquy and in a graveyard. So like just super simple means to kind of transport the audience outside of the prison.
Part of the battle of like getting the look and feel of the movie is also going to be your work with the DP to create that sort of cohesive feel. So I'm wondering, what was the relationship like? How did you guys figure out how you'd work? What, did he have specific colors you had to stay away from? What was that like?
No, I didn't have to stay away from any specific colors. I think Pat also wanted to stay away from movie cliches about prison and just being as realistic as possible. And he introduced the 16 millimeter film stock for the film, which I think just gives it such a timeless quality. And I think where it kind of indirectly marries the prison look is that the prison experience itself is just like, it's devoid of time markers. Like even though conceptually our movie is kind of set in 2005, it's actually like nobody knows when it is. Like there are no cell phones, no phones, like very little cues for what time is it. And pairing that with the look that and the softness and the warmth that film gives you, and like all the skin tones, but also other things just like mush into a more abstract shape. It gives you almost like a quality of a memory. So I think that I think I'm steering away from the question, but I just love Pat's work so much. And
I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Yeah. It could be anything from Pixar or early 2000s Disney like animated films like Mulan.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Gordon. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the questions, and they were much better than the answers, as far as I can tell.
No, they were fantastic, your answers. That's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.